Comment from the public? Okay. And minutes approval.
So I did not distribute minutes. I need to get those to you. Now the chair, based on current read of the open meeting law, can approve minutes without the body approving it. So I'd ask that Mr. Eversole, by the end of the week, I can get those to you and you approve them.
I'd actually, if you can get them to everybody, and then they can get comments to me in case there's any substantial changes.
Okay. I can get those out to you guys tomorrow.
Any feedback from any committees or boards that you've been to since our last meeting?
No, I have a meeting next week with the library committee, or library board of trustees. Nothing, I think I had the pack with, I reported on the last meeting. And the cultural council's meeting now, I could run over.
I had a conversation passing with the town clerk. We've been playing telephone tag ever since, but we'll probably sit down sometime next week if we can figure out a point.
I spoke with the building department, and they committed to getting a written response to us by the end of December. But right now, just a cursory or preliminary review of everything. No one has anything to recommend.
I'm having a little difficulty contacting my committees. I've written to the Board of Health twice. They've not responded.
It's on our agenda for next Monday.
It is?
Just so you're aware of it.
Okay.
I spoke with her today, is the one who works upstairs, and she added that, made sure that was on the agenda.
Great. Same thing with the Parks Commission. Haven't heard from them. It's not clear what their meeting schedule is. I'm going to try and watch for the agenda and attend their next meeting. I'm going to try and attend the Board of Health meeting on Monday as well. And then the Trust Fund Commission, I had trouble getting contact information for the Trust Fund Committee. I finally got that, wrote to them, and have not yet heard. There's no evidence that they've met or have a meeting scheduled. There was an agenda posted for April 25th or May 25th. There are no minutes at all. So I'll wait to see if I hear from them.
Okay.
I'll continue reaching out.
Great. So I was not here at the last meeting. Did you get to go over Articles 1 and 2, the initial part? Immediate reactions to the discussion? I mean, it'll come out in minutes, but were there proposed changes?
Most of it revolves around Section 2 that had to do with if we added a second permanent meeting and what the rules would be around that, if you would change how you would do citizen petitions, how many, that whole section would be redone.
And we discussed town moderator assigning a deputy, changing that. Tim Murphy wants that. We'd like to have that changed.
Have that in advance. Clearly, from the special town meeting last night, there was a lot of interest in, what got people out? Well, certainly the topic got people out. The meeting, we lost some people because of time, and then when certain articles were done, some other people left, but it was, I think the time, what did we get out of there, 9:30?
The clocks were wrong, so some people thought it was like 11:30, it was like not.
Well, yeah.
The clock was like 45 minutes
Yeah,
past in the
yeah.
auditorium.
John Henshaw kept turning to me saying, I should be asleep now.
But I mean, I think that the fact that we are discussing alternatives to the current town meeting is a great opportunity to engage people for the ones that were there. There was also, when I checked in, there was somebody who was given the card, and they said, "What's the card for?" Obviously, that person had never been to town meeting before, so the concept of explaining, as we talked about, for education about what town meeting is before you get there, or can there be a handout at town meeting, what to expect tonight or today, how to behave. The moderator usually talks about taking off the hat, addressing people, other things like that. The previous speaker might not be a bad idea, not in the charter, But one of the other recommendations we don't want to do is communicate it.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that at the PAC meeting when I was there, I talked to Joe about the video that I had posted on Facebook, and actually she's obtained it to post on, to run it
Yeah.
regularly, just what's town meeting and all that stuff.
Interesting.
And I was going to suggest, a lot of people like to click on the 2-minute what to expect or how to act at town meeting.
Yep,
YouTube video kind of thing.
Could
That's
be on our
all-
town Facebook page
Right.
it could be.
when we have one. And I think, did you bring this up, Michael? We keep talking about the lay communication, and I think that could go as early as being a part of the mailing. So that's what is this mailing, why are you getting it, how can you use it, and if you come, what to expect when you come.
Yeah.
I just think when we vote at town meetings, people always associate who aren't familiar voting with going to going to cast a typical vote versus what are we actually going to do at this meeting.
Yeah.
I think teaching is a part of communicating.
Good.
Those are like a little more than me.
You sucked all the energy.
Sure, like I said.
Zoning out a little.
Somebody just made a motion to end discussion. Yeah, that is last call. So, we can move right into Articles 3 and 4.
These are just the highlights that we identified at the last meeting
Okay.
that we were kind of wanted to touch upon this meeting just to see if we had a larger group.
Okay, Special town meeting, which I believe that was the discussion about whether we have a regular second meeting in addition with possible special town meetings. Target fiscal impact.
And I was looking to modify the language in 2-C1 into targeting the fiscal impact.
Oh, for the initial town meeting? Okay, so the initial town meeting is for the budget, and the second one would be...
And then the other highlight here, I think, was, most of this I think we're going to have to come back to and discuss, but Katie mentioned something, I remember in Article 2-9 about adding a requirement to post online.
We're actually in posting meetings. So in the town bylaws, there's a requirement that meetings be posted online as well as minutes. So if somebody doesn't do that, it's a violation of the town bylaw as opposed to the open meeting law. We had to give the state, the selectmen at that time determined that the official posting process is the bulletin board outside town meeting so that it's accessible to the public at all times. And then the bylaws were amended at some point thereafter to say that people have to post things online. We ought to look at, I think one of the things is how do you actually enforce that?
Speaking of enforcement, in 2-7, we discussed Part B, that warrant articles are supposed to be mailed to the chairperson of the Finance Committee who hasn't received anything in the mail. Ever.
Well, I don't know about that, Mark was hit before.
I wrote down that...
Actually, no, I take it back. We have a mailbox at Town Hall.
But this
And the
says to
warrant-
your home.
I know it says to your home.
Yeah.
It was never mailed to me at home during my 5 years as
Right.
the chair.
And then in the same area, we were talking about the warrants, when the council was looking at it to make sure it was appropriate, that a synopsis, the
For each
people
item.
doing it, kind of like what we do when we vote for different things with the state, there's a little short paragraph that says X, Y, and Z, and that would be something the council would have to look at with the warrant to make sure that it matched and it wasn't false or whatever.
And then how do you do a synopsis of a citizen petition?
Does a citizen petition have to go to town
That'll go
council?
through town council anyway, so I think it would all go through
Right,
the same process.
but part of that goes to the, as you think about, I'm not saying we shouldn't have it, it's the question, make sure it's done fairly. That if you think of what the state ballot questions, there's a pro and con. So
Oh, I
the
see.
person who proposes the article comes up with the pro article, and the people who don't like it comes up with a con article, so that you, when the words you choose can influence how people
Correct.
think about an article. So you want to not have somebody come up with something, especially if it's a poorly written article, town council won't know how to write something on
Oh.
that.
Well,
so-
a lot of things on the warrant aren't pros and cons, it's just if it's both, it's like all the salary things, so it's not as much of a,
I was thinking of the wastewater thing where basically just moving everything over and we're changing 6 words.
So
Send
that
people
whole
to-
20 pages.
more of an explanation than
Yeah.
a
More of a
con.
description of the
A
concept.
description or an explanation.
Or a yes,
I was
what
thinking
we
more of
said.
a neutral, this is what the article is
Right,
proposing.
right.
An explanation more than a debate.
Not a debate at all, but just a,
Good point.
you know.
Right. Because actually, even I was going to say, like a yes vote means probably also would have been helpful talking about, there's, $5,000 we're going to add to the heating system over at the Eagle House, but that's also on top of something, but that's not explained, so people, that's why Sue gets up and says, well, I have 3, but I don't know how far 5,000 is going to go. But I think that would help people understand exactly what it was that they were voting on. I'm sorry.
Just again on section 2.7, one of the questions I had, it's just a question, does anybody know the thinking behind the split on the citizens petition, 10 voters at an annual town meeting and 100 voters for special town meeting?
It's general law.
It's general law?
Yeah.
I looked it up after the last meeting because we had talked about that.
And so part of the interesting thing is that the theory being is that everybody knows there's an annual town meeting, therefore you don't need to get as many people to get the information together. But if we actually have 2 annual town meetings, do we go to 10 for the second, or do you still require 100 when it's a regular meeting that's going to be the fall meeting? So it's something to think about.
Yeah, I think if we're going to incorporate 2 town meetings into the charter, then everywhere where we refer to town meeting, we're going to refer to spring town meeting, fall town meeting, or both.
I think given
And I would think we'd have the same
rules
rule.
would feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then if it was a special town meeting, then it really is a special rule
Right.
for
Right.
something out of the ordinary. Because I remember when it was unusual to not have a fall town meeting. It was like, okay, so we don't need to have it, and then we ended up having to have it in February. So I think this is a good discussion going forward. Anything else on 2?
Yeah. This came out in another activity, but at the bylaw review committee's warrant article at the town meeting when they did their update, and this passed at town meeting, they took out Article 12, Finance Committee, from the bylaw. And the reason they did that is they referenced that it already exists in Town Charter Section 2.3. And they stated that these were it was part of the discussion on unsubstantial changes, etc. But we came to find that there was one fairly substantial change in that the wording they took out for the Finance Committee says there shall be a Finance Committee consisting of 7 voters of the town appointed by the selectmen, body, da-di-da-di-da. And the charter section that they refer to is 2.3 that says there shall be a Finance Committee that shall consist of 7 members. And it doesn't say voters of the town. So in effect, they took out, by doing that, the fact that a member of the Finance Committee has to be a voter of the town. And in fact, we now have a member of the Finance Committee who is not registered to vote. So if we want to address that as the charter, it's something we can address as the charter. If we want to send it back to next time they look at the bylaws, that's another possible action.
Is there anything in Mass General Law that covers that?
Don't know.
I would assume council would have looked at that when,
Council just looked at, well, I don't know, maybe they looked at that too, but council looked at this and made the ruling that it was, according to our current set of bylaws and charters, you didn't have to be a voter. Now, I would assume that if MGL said you had to be, that would have come up.
Well, I would
Town
ask,
council checked in.
then I would ask the question, based on this is written, do they have to be a resident?
that's true.
They could be from Pittsburgh.
Good question.
So I think that maybe, I think it would make perfect sense then the charter to identify, instead of saying 7 members, it would be 7 voters of the town appointed for terms, and then you can talk about the members shall be appointed by.
I wonder whether it should be, as opposed to being in the finance committee section, it should be any board or committee. I mean, is there a place to put
So
it?
here's the story. There are some people in certain religions, Jehovah's Witnesses being one, where they're not in accordance with their dictates of their faith, they cannot be a registered voter. But they would be a resident of the town, which would then mean that you would preclude them from serving. So, suitable for us to do further investigation.
Well,
I think
how about citizen,
No, or resident,
Resident.
if you said resident.
citizen of the country?
Huh? Good question. So, somebody who's here with a green card.
Which may take care of the registered to vote question, but
Well,
in time.
That's assuming. So I think this deserves additional research, including talking to town council. The town council will know a lot of these things from the other towns that don't.
I'd be very surprised if this is not in the general law. It's got to be.
Clearly is for elected positions, because in order to be elected to something, you would have to be a voter in order to be elected.
Do you, or do you have to be a resident?
Don't know that either.
You can just Google Mass General laws.
I just think of all these state senators who
all the time,
move all over the place. Oh, I have a house in Utah, so I can run
Yeah.
for Utah.
It's very
I
small,
visited
but
one of these
2007
a year.
has 5 o'clock in, where we in here, C, for petitions to be due, and the bylaw says 4. I know it's really small, but
No,
it's
this
different.
is what we want to do. Let's get things correct.
And so where it's 5 o'clock, I think it's in C, the inclusionary warrant. So
Yes.
2-7C, it says 5, and then the same information in the bylaw says it by 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So if I showed up at 4:30, the charter says.
And remember, there's a rule somewhere, I don't know where it is, that if there's a conflict, the charter wins.
Okay, so I can still turn it in.
And it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Wait, 5 o'clock where?
You have a theme here. Anything else on 2?
210, rules of procedure. We were discussing a little bit. Tim Murphy, the moderator, would like to have the town meeting time book. The town meeting, something like by law established from time to time, whatever, to include that they were going to, what he says at the meeting, we're going to use this book, but to also keep the revisor, repeal as needed. We'd like that in the charter so that everyone is aware that's the basic guideline.
Good.
Well, we're talking town moderator 2.2. We discussed part of Tim Murphy's suggestions. He would like the appointment of a deputy town moderator to be done by the Board of Selectmen rather than the town clerk.
Yeah, not that it be done in advance, but at the start of the meeting, it defers to the town clerk to make the appointment. If he's not there, not the Board of Selectmen.
He'd like to switch that. He would love to have, I think his intent is to have it at the first meeting of the year to appoint someone who would then be the go-to person for the rest of the year. If something were to happen to Tim, there would be someone that's already been offered, and then the selectmen.
Because right now, it's the town moderator shall appoint the deputy moderator.
But it says,
And it's subject to ratification by town meeting.
but under town clerk, I had that written down somewhere. It says the town clerk, 311. See, it's in section 3.
What's
All right.
the reasoning, like, to change who appoints it? I think it should be appointed ahead of time. I like that idea, but what was...
I think he wanted to get away from one person to a committee so that it's a consensus rather than one person.
Could it be the town clerk in combination with people, so it's not, something like that?
Well, let's see what he said.
My read from what you said last week as well was that, based on how it's worded, is that this has to or should occur at town meeting, and that was the concern, was if he can't make it at town meeting, then how does he appoint a deputy?
I will read, he did say, "The charter envisions the moderator appoint a deputy every spring to serve in his absence for the year." That's how he reads it. "But since I cannot solicit a deputy for an uncertain date, I have not followed the provision. When I'm aware of a conflict, I find someone, and someone at the meeting to rise and move the body to approve." So he says it would make more sense for the Board of Selectmen to have that authority. I would expect most moderators would still assist to find a replacement. So that the language demoting the town clerk as the default moderator should be eliminated. Because under 3.1, Section 1, if the moderator is not there, the town clerk is the moderator.
Do you think that's because they know that that other person will also be there? That they're deferring it to somebody they know is in-house? And maybe that's part of...
I'm sorry, which one are you looking at? 3-1?
All right. Did I write it down wrong? 311?
And it sounds like it's asking for there to be
Article 2.
somebody in place, but that's not how it's currently done.
Two presiding officer.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the mention of the clerk, and I haven't come across it yet.
It's wherever the town clerk thing is.
Oh, it's buried in the town
Oh,
clerk.
that's
Okay, so
Where the
we've
hell-
got to cross-reference three places.
312. See, I said 31, yeah, it's 312.
Okay.
Section 312. It says, in the absence of the town moderator or deputy town moderator, preside over town meeting pending the election of the temporary town moderator. He would like to, at the first town meeting, have someone selected, because that's not being done at the moment.
So the reason it's here, in the absence of town moderator or deputy moderator preside over town meeting pending the election of the temporary town moderator, was to give the power to someone to actually run the meeting until they've actually elected.
Right.
So the town clerk's not going to act it. So if he's proposing that the selectmen, and I would say it would be selectmen in conjunction with the town moderator, will appoint a moderator for the year in the spring or something like that would be the way to do it. Then you wouldn't need to have the preside over.
Right, and then you would just indicate that that person could call town meeting to order. Because I think that's the whole point, is who is authorized to call town meeting to order.
Right, so let's say we have an unusual situation where both the town moderator and the deputy are not available.
Yeah.
Then how do you convene the meeting
Right.
and elect somebody to take the place? You have to have somebody. And I think this language of having the town clerk preside over the meeting until an election takes place is fine.
I agree
It
with
should
that.
I
remain.
think it's like a super backup plan, so
Yeah.
that you know
Yeah,
you have somebody there
Right.
who is capable of understanding the process more than anything.
Yeah.
They let
I
me...
agree.
Otherwise, right, everybody's sitting around.
Yeah.
But I think Tim's main point is he would like at the first meeting to have someone appointed
Prior
as
to
deputy,
that.
and he would like the Board of Selectmen to be the
Right.
body to do it.
That's
But
what
I
I think.
think to Mark's point, I think that what the town clerk steps in the absence of both the moderator and the deputy.
Yeah.
And it's only to conduct an election.
Right.
Go
It's only to call the meeting to order in order to have an
Okay.
election of the moderator.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Just make sure Tim's there.
Now, we haven't discussed it yet, but can a appointed official do that?
Yes, if the charter says it.
Because we're discussing
Appointed
town
versus
clerk
elected.
being whether appointed or elected. I don't know what the legal law is.
The town clerk in every town, whether it's elected or not, has certain administrative duties regardless,
Okay.
unrelated to how they're
All right.
selected.
Thanks.
All right, so we've got to look at the language for the presiding officer for picking a deputy monitor, go 2.2. Else on 2? This doesn't mean we can't come back to it another time.
Nope.
Just for this one.
I know, we're looking at everything.
So, Article 3, elected officials. Just as a point of information, 3.1, elected offices, town offices to be filled by ballot of the whole town. That presumes we're not voting by district or having district selectmen. In some towns you'd have wards or precincts. We have 4 precincts in town, ABCD. So you theoretically could have 4 selectmen from those sections and 1 at large. I'm not proposing that, but just to know that this states that whoever's in town runs for office and is elected by everybody in town.
So by your previous comment, eligibility, you're someone who, by religious reasons, can't register to vote is not eligible to be elected.
Yeah. So that probably follows state law, but we ought to check on that, just to make sure in case anyone asks for that, so.
I'm sorry, Jamie, where are you looking?
B, 3.1B.
eligibility, yeah.
But if their religious affiliation provides they can't be registered, then chances their religious affiliation says they can't.
Can't be
serve.
elected either, right?
Yeah, so.
So, why wouldn't we just carry that same eligibility to appointed positions?
I think we should.
Make it consistent.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a problem with that? Okay.
Once we look into the legal,
law, yeah.
the law to make sure that it's okay.
Do you feel like you have to cast votes in a sense when you're on a board or committee? So if you're not allowed to vote, maybe you can't even conduct, I'm not sure, but conduct what is necessary to be on the board or
That's
committee.
a great point. Yeah.
Get some information on that. Section D, compensation. Elected town officials shall receive compensation as may be appropriated. State law requires that elected officials' compensation be appropriated separately and called out, which we do, which right now is town clerk and board of selectmen. Selectmen receive $100 a year.
Go out to dinner once.
Do you know the history behind that?
Yes.
I mean, why they get paid?
So that they can get health care coverage.
It used to be.
Yeah, I know, but now it costs more to administer that than it's worth.
Right. So we
I mean,
could direct the town manager in establishing the next budget to not pay the selectmen to take that out.
Would that be a charter thing, or is that something we just
No.
could do?
No, it just says it's called up. So
Do
it
any
says
towns
again.
pay more?
Yes.
Yeah.
So prior to town managers, you would have what some towns in Connecticut have called as a first selectman, which is the chair often, and it's really a full-time job.
Okay.
So you could pay $10,000, $20,000 a person to administer the town. You'd have the primary selectman being the one that gets to make the day-to-day decisions, like a town manager, and then the others would provide the information. Other towns we used to compensate the Board of Assessors and the school committee. School
And there's
committee.
still towns that have committees that have salaries.
Yeah. There was a separate provision regarding elected officials. We took away the ability to get health insurance, and it wasn't necessarily tied to I think there was actual vote to do that. Some of it was reducing the salary at that point. So yeah, no, that's not a requirement that we be paid. Coordination, provides the concept of if there is an issue within either appointed or elected boards, the town manager or the selectmen can call them in to make a consultation conference and discussion. So I think that's, in the absence of good communication, there's actually some backup to when there isn't.
Okay, actually, so you're saying notwithstanding their election by the voters, that's...
The selectman or the town manager could call in another elected board into the selectmen's meeting, saying they have to come to talk about what's
Okay.
going on. Filling of vacancies, I believe this tracks state law, but we may want to look at the notice provisions. So failure to elect in a multiple member body, or if a vacancy, if somebody resigns. Remaining members shall give notice of the vacancy to the Board of Selectmen and to the public in the manner provision in 7-10. I'm not sure if they're the ones that actually do that notice currently. Vacancy.
No less than 10 days.
Appointing authority shall forthwith cause public notice to be posted on the town bulletin board for not less than 10 days. Description of the duties. No permanent appointment to fill shall be effective until 14 days following date such notice was posted. So that says that the appointing authority shall cause public notice, whereas the vacancies section says that remaining members shall give notice of vacancy to the section to the public in the manner provided in section 7-10. So we ought to clarify that. What traditionally has been done is, I think the town manager's office has done the publication. And in fact, I've recently seen advertisements in the Lunenburg Ledger for vacancies, which from what I see here is not required. So I think we have to clarify the 3.1F2 vacancies versus 7.10 notice of vacancies.
And it doesn't say it has to be published in a paper?
I don't see that.
Would we want to add that, since it's being done and it seems like a good idea?
Unless it's in would it potentially be in the bylaw?
I think we should have the same posting requirements across the board.
I don't remember seeing it in the bylaws.
Okay.
I have a question though, when we're talking about this. In the event, let's say that you had, let me think of a good board.
Planning board vacancy?
The planning board. So in the event that you had 2 planning board vacancies, and we're all on rotational schedules, how does one run for office? Like, let's say that,
You run for the remainder of the term.
Actually, you run for that position's remained a term, but you have to run again in the following election.
correct.
So if you have 2 years left in the term, you're running, so you have a 2-year term and a 3-year term. You would be appointed to fill, in some ways it doesn't make any difference.
But who would have gotten the 2-year and the 1-year?
Yeah,
You
that's-
actually have to assign it. So when we do replacement of committees, we say we're appointing somebody to the 2-year position remaining of the term or the 3-year position. You have to pick. And when you actually run for office, you have to pick whether it's the 2-year term, 1-year
Okay.
term, or 3-year term.
So, like, we're all 5-year terms. So in the event that you have, let's say Katie and I go run for the planning board next year, and there are, let's say that there's 2 vacancies, and we both say that we want the 5-year term that's up and due, and we don't run for the other term, by default, will one of us fall into that other term,
Not-
or now we have to do the whole process again?
Not if you're running for election. You have to pick the
Which term?
spot.
Okay.
The way it's written now.
Can I
So
throw
maybe-
a quick comment, very quick comment. If there was a write-in of either candidate to that position on the ballot, they would be able to pick.
That's true.
So if one person wrote our, wrote in for the other position that was vacant, basically.
Whoever gets the most write-in votes could accept that position versus the other.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. Okay.
But this is why
Are you running for planning?
this is why you want certainty in what's going to happen, so that you have all the rules set out in
Yeah.
advance and people know what's going to go on.
I think we might need to clarify that. In the event that we do have, 2 seats come open in a body that has rotating seats, of how do you fill them, basically.
That's a really good point. It would really complicate the situation. You both are there, maybe there's only 2 people or 2 openings, but one is maybe so much more preferable than the other.
I think
This
procedurally...
is not an uncommon problem.
Right.
So that there's probably a best practice that's out there somewhere. I don't know how we'd find it, but
Although it's rare for contested incumbency or contested elections, period.
well, by definition, it's not an incumbency because...
Right, or contested election, yes, or contested elections, period.
Well, actually, we've had this situation happen when we voted to appoint people. Actually, I think we did it on an elected position, where nobody nominated the other person from either board. And the question was, well, therefore you're effectively appointing the other person because only you nominated and then people voted on the one nomination. If there were 2 positions, procedurally, I would say we would take one vacancy first and then do the second one. But I think it needs to be clarified here, and that if more than one vacancy exists at the time, they'll be treated as separate vacancies, and we just state that.
Right, and then certainly I remember with the Finance Committee, I think I came in with 3 people, and so we had a 3, a 2, and a 1.
Okay.
So that was
And it was up to the appointing authority...
to identify who
Yeah.
got which term, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good clarification, so that'd be section 10, subsection 10. If there's a failure to elect for the Board of Selectmen, the only way to fill that is by an election. So, but the remaining members of the Board of Selectmen may call a special election and shall call a special election upon the written decision of 200 more. So if they fail to act, you get 200 people, so you get a coverage here.
Sure. I'm going to assume that the only multiple member body that the Willard Trust refers to is going to be the commissioner of...
Actually, that's not, because the trust fund commissioners are covered here. It would be if there was somebody gave $1 million to the town and said it's to be administered by an elected per my will.
Oh.
So the trust fund commissioners are not subject to that requirement.
Right.
So subsection G is recall of elected officials.
Can I assume that some of this is just Mass General Law language?
No. If you go to the town of Townsend, who recently had 2 proposals of recalls and then challenges against it, because they actually have a clause in Townsend that specifically excludes discretionary decisions made by the elected board, as opposed to, I believe, ours is, what does it say the reason? The grounds for recall, period. It doesn't state what the grounds are. And we've never had a recall election in the 34 years that it's been in place. So we may not need to change this, but that would be something that we may want to consider. The theory being is that some places want to do a recall if somebody's done something malfeasance in office, to actually list of 2 or 3 different things, or do you want to have the ability, we can choose to elect somebody or not, we can choose to unelect them. That's what effectively this does.
As was the recent case in Shirley.
Yep. I think just the to-do on this is to make sure that the process and the dates are consistent with state law.
So what you're suggesting, just so I'm clear on this, is that perhaps in 3-1-3G1, that we were recall of elected officials, that we specify the reasons to recall a person?
It would be something for us to discuss.
It's very,
Right, should we establish grounds for recall?
I have this very simplistic view of it. If nothing negative like this has happened and it's been written this way, it's like a don't fix what isn't broken. Because it's very calm and nothing really agitated the situation. So I feel like if we start defining it, we're drawing attention to it, and I don't know why we would want to do that.
I'll go back to my testimony when I supported this that many years ago. People said, Lunenburg's never had recall, why do we need it? There was actually one year when the town had 3 selectmen and they voted to establish 5 selectmen. So they didn't get rid of the selectmen, but they added 2 more and they changed the vote. It was a 2-1 vote, and they added 2 new, so it was a 3-2 vote going the other way. So it wasn't a recall, but they changed the direction. So I'm a big believer in the voters having the ability to change course if something's not going the way they want it to. But we should look at what do the other towns have. We may choose not to change it.
Like, I really don't want to look into towns right now.
Or Shirley?
Although this seems like it just leaves the flexibility open.
But maybe there should be I think there should be clearer guidelines. Because, people get upset about things, it happens. We like to believe that most people don't get petty, but, in the event that someone's upset about, something happening, that we want to have clear guidelines.
We haven't. I also, is there any, what's the mass law and whatnot? Can you really control completely
The reasons
whether or
for
not?
You can. In this one, you can specify what the grounds are, and the more clear you are, no matter what you write, you may have a lawsuit, but...
Maybe the mirror would be the language on, for when you're going into executive session for appointees, right, when you're discussing their issues.
You don't go into executive session for appointees.
Then maybe I'm getting confused with the language, but when you are evaluating whether or not you want to remove an appointed person, I'm recalling...
So that's, all right, so to discuss the reputation, character, or health of the candidate, you can go into executive session unless the person asks for it to be public.
Yeah.
But that could be removing. I don't remember hearing ever removing an appointed person, just to let you know. The only other time that they may have done it is somebody, this was an old requirement of the Finance Committee, that if they missed a certain number of meetings, then they might remove somebody there.
But there is language, right, that exists out there with the state that maybe we can mirror. For, like, as you just noted, with, looking at the...
But that wouldn't be for an election recall. That wouldn't be public. That wouldn't be executive session.
Yeah, but I'm saying that language that you just referenced, that maybe that's the
Oh, it's
language
for the
that we should be
character.
targeting in this section.
Creating a list would be very complicated.
I agree.
And then I think you really start...
As soon as you start to try and define it, you're putting boundaries around something that...
You may have forgotten to define something that's important.
And so here's the other thing, is that in order to do it, you have to have 20% of the voters have to sign a petition.
It's a lot of people.
So that's 1,400 people.
It's not easy.
If you had 1,400 people say you want to get rid of a selectman or a planning board member, we probably ought to let that process go
It's a fair amount of work to get 150 signatures.
Yeah, right. Try to get 1,400.
The threshold is pretty high.
I think that's why
I think so.
Okay.
And the person being recalled can run, and if there's an election first, is the person recalled or not? If they're not, you don't count the votes. If they are recalled, they theoretically could be recalled and immediately re-elected.
I don't think that's true.
No, excuse me.
It's the other way around.
Okay. So,
I remember reading.
I don't think they're allowed to run.
so they're running. If they're not recalled,
They stay.
they stay.
Because if they're on the ballot, and
Right.
then the recall happens in between, they just don't count the vote, the ballot.
Oh, and then 2/3 of the vote cast have to be in the affirmative. So you need 1,400 votes to get the petition, and then of all the votes of the town that actually vote, 2/3 have to vote to get rid of that person.
It's a fair...
That's a pretty high...
That's pretty high.
So maybe there don't need to be any.
Yeah.
Maybe there doesn't need to be any.
And no person who's been recalled or who resigned while recall proceedings shall be appointed to any town office within 2 years after such recall. 3.2 Board of Selectmen.
Can they rerun?
They can.
After 2 years.
No, actually, they could run
The
the
2 years
next
is
year.
for appointment.
2 years is for appointment.
Oh, I'm
The
sorry.
theory being that the voters can always vote.
Okay.
True.
So selectmen have executive powers, chief policy-making agency, formulation and promulgation of policy directives and guidelines.
Before we go too far, Bob, do we want to entertain a discussion of what do we call this committee? Is it a select board, of which there are 5 members, for example, as opposed to a board of selectmen, right? I think it's said up front, we might want to visit what we call this body.
I advocate, I know that the feedback from the females on the Board of Selectmen are that they don't mind being called selectmen, but I would advocate for the name to be changed to Select Board. You know, I think that names matter, and what concerns me is that, you know, we're telling the young females in the community that their goal is to be a man one day. And I don't know if that really is, even though men, I think, historically refers to all people, I think now it's very genderized. So I would advocate that we get rid of the extra men there and just change it to Select Board.
I'm going to say that I'm comfortable with Board of Selectmen. If, even if I were one or not were one, it's not something that has ever jumped out at me, especially because I look at the word woman and men's in there, and it's just like a root word. And so just my personal, not to say what other people need to feel, but I would never feel offended by being on a Board of Selectmen. And I would probably even refer to myself as a selectman and not even default to woman, just because it doesn't offend me.
And I completely understand and agree with where you're coming from. But I also, every time we look at these changes, I think about what the discussion will look like at town meeting. And this is one of these things where it's all about a matter of perception and opinion. And we could be an hour in with people going, well, I like it, I don't like it, you know.
Yeah, let's put up a poll.
I think, Janie, did you say when you call yourself, if you change your name, you still have to
You're
refer to
still a
yourself as a
Well,
selectman?
you're either a member of the select board, which most people don't like, or you're a selectman.
And then you can still choose to default to select woman,
Sure.
which is still available to anyone on the Board of Selectmen.
I like the member of the select board. I'm with you on this one. I think like it does matter. I think select men just...
Yeah, and I don't disagree, but again,
Of a board,
this,
I'm not a select.
they're just...
We're showing it here right
They're
now.
just here, a small group of
Right,
people.
But if we explain it, like you explain it to people...
I'm imagining 200 people having this discussion.
The line with the microphone.
But we shouldn't be afraid of public opinion.
Well, that's why I'm also saying that
Yeah.
this might be one of those topics that you include in a survey, because basically, again, you don't want to get stuck with if people object to one portion of the charter, the whole charter gets...
And I was just going to bring up the point is we
Yeah.
have to pick our battles.
So,
Because I think it should be a role model for the town, and I would rather see Board of Select Board. But if it's the one point that votes it all down, you have to weigh the good and the bad. And I think that's a great idea. That would be something to poll,
You've got
Yeah,
that
I just found
acronym,
that
feel
things that aren't based on fact and are based on opinion become the most deadly kind of
I agree with
debate.
you.
It's a lot of editing.
And that will shoot down everything.
So the other thing I'd like to do is, in addition to considering the survey, would be to find out what other cities and towns have done. what are they, council law?
It's not
Councilman?
council, it's Board of Selectmen or Select Board, and if you're on the Select Board, you're a selectman.
Okay.
So that's what I've seen. The places that have town councils really are cities,
Yeah.
but they wanted
Well,
to
on a similar
maintain.
thing, did they change it from councilman to councilors? So that may have been, because quite often in a city, you were a councilman, because at that point only...
Right, they probably did change
So
it to
they changed
councilor,
it also,
yeah.
like police
You
officer...
can be a selector.
Select.
I-
Sounds like you're in the electoral college.
Well, I think that the names would still be selectmen or selectwomen, and I think that people would still have the option of calling themselves whichever they would choose. But it's, I think it's a matter of appearance, it's a matter of how things are worded, and, kind of the image that we're setting forth for young people as well as each other, that we're led by a select board, in my opinion, rather than a board of men.
So in section 1.7 definitions, you could just put in, selectmen will be used to refer to select men, select women, there, so that the language can be the same. Does that make sense? In section 1.7...
We can worry about changing the language. With the tools we have available today, you can do a find and replace.
Yeah, it's super simple.
No, but that way there, it's listed the same way. You don't have to worry about whether it's Board of Select or Select Men or Select Women. You know how these, they all refer, when we refer to town, it's the town of Lunenburg. When we refer to Select Men, it's the Select Board.
And I think I'm with Mike a little bit on this, in the sense that could this defeat the whole
Right.
charter? We're debating this, and then it gets like a
Yeah.
nay, and then everything we've sat to talk about and change. And then we're 10 years, and we can't go to 2 permanent meetings in our charter, et cetera, because we've debated this.
This kind of discussion will drown out substantive discussion. Because again, everybody can stand up and voice their opinion. It doesn't really...
And the other part we need to consider is what the current movement is of additional genders.
Oh, that's true,
So
because, yes.
this really does open a large discussion.
So we probably shouldn't open.
But if surveying, it can create a consensus where if it felt like there was a popular feeling.
It may be. So I think we look at a survey and we just don't do it electronically, we do it on paper, we do it other ways to
It would be
access
great
everybody's access.
with the new website if there was like a permanent survey thing people could like look out for and like constantly contribute to.
Mhm.
So anytime you're looking for like this, that people would actually get into it being like this trendy thing, did you check the surveys?
When you vote in the Sentinel, anybody else vote in the Sentinel, find out. And then be in the front page of the Sentinel, you can vote.
And they always say at the bottom, this is not a scientific.
Yeah,
poll,
exactly.
because it's
Like,
only people who
all-
want to vote.
I mean, in the room right now, what is our, if we were to change this to select board, is there anyone that's opposed to that?
No?
Okay.
I'm opposed just for the reasons I stated. I think that it'll drown out a greater discussion.
I don't necessarily oppose it, except that I have no opposition to it as it stands, which
Right.
maybe feels like I'm opposing it.
You're not for it, you're against it?
Well, I think the survey has to say, select boards, Board of Selectmen, don't care. I mean, because basically I'm ambivalent, I have to confess.
And then people
I
are
find
like, what's
select
the
board
Board of
just easier to
Selectmen?
say.
There you
You
go,
have to
there you
first
go.
explain what
That's
it
right.
is.
That's true.
And luckily, I mean, people who are ambivalent, they're not good. Having
Get up and
opinions.
I will not
Really
extend
just
discussion.
strongly,
Let me just try one thing. This is a charter. What if we said, the first time we mentioned it, Board of Selectmen / Select Board, and then never touched it again?
That'll work.
And let the current members call themselves whatever the hell they please, and have the language be what it is, a charter, responsibilities, all that other stuff. Would that work? Because that's the way we've kind of been operating.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to stand up and say, I'm a member of the select board, nobody's going to say, oh, we don't have a select board.
What would we pick to constantly, whenever it
No,
says
just
it
the first
here?
time you mention it, you just say selectmen / select board, and then you never mention it again.
So the option's there.
I think that would work great, because I think that serves both purposes. and which are keeping with the historic name, Board of Selectmen, which are also...
What do you put on the website?
Yeah, I feel like you're creating huge confusion about how to identify with it if both are available.
Well, that's the point. We're doing the charter.
Yeah, what do you put on the website?
I don't care, I'm doing the charter.
Then when people think there's two sections,
Brian, that might help you out.
I think we need one.
This really is branding, it's branding and marketing. I mean, it really needs to, we need to think what the letterhead's going to say when we sign.
But does that belong in the charter, or does that belong someplace
But
else?
if the charter sets it, then everything has to follow the charter, because this is now the legal document. And
Yes.
so therefore, if you're going to sign a deed, it has to say selectmen/select board. If that's going to be our title, selectmen, select board, or select board slash...
Just want to bring discussion to acronyms, because I like BOS when I'm taking notes, and now you have MOTSBs.
Well, I think it was...
No, I'm serious, because you do see BOS and you become familiar with, when you're reading, it is a commonly used acronym, and nobody would be like, what's the MOTSB?
I think the plan to take a survey and then have a further discussion, I think is the best way forward.
Yep.
So...
Okay. So that's 3, let's see, appointments, so, excuse me, license.
Just,
Good.
can you just clarify, since we have Board of Selectmen here, whatever, in B, are you still running broad policy in your business, or one of the things we talked about at the beginning was making sure the town manager did the day-to-day and the select
So
board?
we have the current board, and I would say over the last few years, the board has clearly been moving in that direction.
Because it says it right here, it's just adoption of broad policy guidelines.
Right.
Is that actually happening, or?
Yes.
Okay, because that was something you guys brought up earlier.
Well, and I'd go to the next language section, provided, however, that nothing in this section should be construed to authorize any member of the Board of Selectmen, nor a majority of such members, to become involved in the day-to-day administration of any town agency. It's the intention of this provision that the Board of Selectmen shall act only through the adoption of broad policy guidelines that to be implemented by officers and employees serving under it. This is only going to work as well as the existing members do this, and the town manager pushes back.
Exactly.
Okay,
So
so it's not a charter thing, it's...
Well, it is a charter.
It's a charter thing.
But whether you follow the charter and whether, we've really never had a citizen challenge us on this.
Okay.
We've internally had some topics that we got through and we said we shouldn't be doing this, the town manager should be doing this.
Okay, so you're governing, but at the moment you're governing yourselves, and you're trying to stay away from, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure, because then that would have changed to say, instead of just broad policy, but overseeing whatever day-to-day.
Yeah.
It's similar on the school committee. I mean, from time to time, a member decides that, they're all about a certain program in the school or a certain...
Which is not really, okay, got it. I've been there, yeah.
And one of the things I would like us to do, we like, for instance, the school committee, there's not a lot you can, they're so regulated in state law.
Right.
But there are other town elected bodies that I would like to maybe echo some of this language in their committees.
That's why I brought it up, because obviously the select is the top, and then you have everything else, and if we're trying to make it all kind of the same, then we should keep the ideology there.
And that was one of the reasons why the previous charter went from a 3-member to a 5-member, was that you had more people to do policy and less people to do day-to-day, once you had the town manager.
All right. Good, okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
So licensing authority is this particular statute. So this is calling it out. There are some towns that have a separate licensing authority. Cities are often the ones that have a separate licensing authority.
The only thing that came up through, the PAC that there's cable licensing, and I think one of the confusions for them was because it identifies the Board of Selectmen as the licensing board, they didn't understand that paying for the attorney to develop the license agreement was on the PAC. And so there was some feeling like that. And how do you know, like maintain for 10 years when there's a whole new PAC that's going to show up in the budget for PAC? Because they didn't
No,
understand why
to
they
me,
wanted
that's a
the town.
budgeting issue, not a charter issue. It really is. Because you can assign the money anywhere you want, and that is, to me, runs similar to an enterprise fund where you're trying to keep the expense relative to a particular revenue generator all in the same place.
Well, I guess the question, because I think the question for them was, and it is a budgeting question, and I'm not sure, I guess the budgeting question for them was, whose budget does it really belong in?
It belongs in theirs.
And why?
Because technically, you don't want a taxpayer that doesn't take advantage of cable television to be paying for it. It's the users through the whole circular.
Isn't it already set up as a revolving fund?
It is.
Yeah, the issue is just who pays the attorney's fees when they have to renegotiate every 10
So
years.
part of this, the other thing,
Right.
Which is true, but it was just one of those things that it wasn't put in their budget because they didn't know it was coming.
And that's a budgeting thing, not a charter thing.
I agree, that's a budget issue.
and part of the thing is that I think it provides that it's not, the authority to do that license comes from the state law, not from the licensing authority to make it that. And I think that the cable license is a statute that says the board of selectmen or the mayor in the city
Okay.
shall, as opposed to the authority of licensing. This one assumes liquor licenses,
Vendor
vendor
licenses,
licenses,
stuff like that.
Entertainment licenses, what was that?
Entertainment, yeah.
Pinball licenses?
Yeah.
right here in River City.
Dances?
Pool hall. So appointments. Town accountant. And I will do a little short thing on the town accountant when we come to the town manager. There's a finance director who may or may not be the town accountant. So just a little footnote there. Constables, town council, members of the Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, Historical Commission, Personnel Board, Register of Voters, and other election officials. Council on Aging is provided by bylaw. A director of said council. Members of other multiple member bodies, the function of which do not involve direct operating responsibilities, but which are primarily policy-making or advisory in nature. So,
I'm curious as to the duties of a constable. I've always been curious about that.
serving subpoenas, the town warrant, posting, things like that.
So is this where we would address the issue of who's eligible to be appointed?
No.
No, because they talk about the appointment of the police chief and the fire chief and the fire chief. It would probably be
These are all
another
the
member.
appointed on,
These are
actually the finance committee is separate.
Right. So, but it's probably just under multi-member boards, someone.
It'll be limiting if we require, like, the police chief to have to be a resident of the town at the time of appointment, because, you know, that maybe we wouldn't get the best pool.
Right.
And I think we have a great chief police, chief of police right now, but, you know, looking at the future.
The same may be true for other appointed positions. Town manager doesn't have to be a resident.
Yeah.
If we move to an appointed town clerk, would we require that individual to be a resident?
In that
Perhaps
case,
not.
we might, because since they are an election official, we actually want them to be a voter.
Okay.
So what I'm going to see if, so D, appointments. I think what would be good for us is to actually have the appointment list to see who the selectmen actually appoint. Because I would like us to look to see what ones might be more appropriately made by the town manager. Particularly within this one, the Council on Aging Director is currently appointed by the selectmen. I think that's more of an administrative position similar to the other department heads that may need to be the town manager. So that's something to think about when we actually look at this list.
Right, and moving it into the next paragraph.
Yep.
Yeah.
So these appointments, and this is another discussion point, so police chief, fire chief, DPW, building inspector, we need to change the language on that. I think it's,
Building official?
Building commissioner.
can't remember what it is. Inspector of wires and plumbing inspector. Well, actually, I guess you relate to that. Shall be effective on the 15th day following the day in which notice of the appointment is filed with the Board of Selectmen, unless the Selectmen reject it or sooner affirm it. So this still keeps some power with the Board of Selectmen. The Selectmen can't appoint the police chief. They can only say, we agree with your decision or we disagree. Please get somebody different if we disagree. There are some towns that are truly a strong town manager. The town manager makes these decisions without the Selectmen's input. I'm not proposing that at the moment, but just being aware of this.
And it is interesting because, actually in the prior paragraph, it's, a director of said council and the members of other multiple member bodies, the functions of which do not involve direct operating responsibilities, and that's true of everything except for the director of the council.
Right. So I think that was a historical accident at that point.
Personnel board.
Well, might you not have either a temporary multiple member body or a new requirement for a multi-member body? And that gives you a place for those appointments.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think the question is the director of said council.
Yeah,
of the council on aging.
so
In some ways, she's
she's in a position, she's in a management position, the director of the council on aging. So she's basically a department head.
So you're suggesting we may want to move that to
her
the town
down.
manager?
Yeah, move it down to the appointment of the police chief, and like that's one of the ratified position appointments. I don't know.
We'll get the list, and so we can come back and look at this to see if they feel they're the right. Is this really a policy-making subcommittee? Is that the one that we want to have the selectmen appoint, or should it be somewhere else?
I'm not sure this is the right place, but just so we don't miss the thought. Do any of these boards, whether they're elected or appointed, have any say in those things? Like, does the Council on Aging have any say in the Director of Council on Aging? Does the Sewer Commission have any say in the Sewer Business Manager? Does the PAC have any say in the PAC Director?
So the Sewer Commission specifically is there. The Planning Board is specifically there. Both of which are appointed by the town manager, subject to the input of those two boards. So we want to look at, should this be parallel, that the town manager appoints the Council on Aging with input from Council on Aging, the manager appoints the director with input of the Council on Aging, as opposed to the selectmen doing it
Well,
themselves.
it might be also be different because the council on aging isn't elected, and all the other bodies are.
Could be.
In the planning board, we do have, based on the language, the ability to reject the land use director. I think we get 14 days or something.
Yeah, so it's a similar.
I'm just tying it back to our agenda 5D. It's elected boards with employees. Now, it probably applies to appointed boards with employees too, but just what role? I'm just trying not to lose the point of the role of the boards with employees that support pretty much.
And the only concern I would say on that, especially in employment, you really want to pull that away from people that may not understand employment law as much as the town manager would be charged with. That would be the only concern I would have.
I do want to bring something up. I unfortunately have to head out in about 10 minutes. So I would ask if we can kind of skip, once we finish this section, to the planning board, so I can bring up a couple of things.
The only other thing that I would ask about in this section is whether or not you want to include any language on the appointment of temporary, whether you have whether you're appointing or creating a new committee, or like say Green Communities Task Force is now the Green Communities something else. But basically the Board of Selectmen shall appoint or shall determine, based on.
So for another recent example would be the Stormwater Task Force,
Right.
which the selectmen established. And we would need to see where the authority to establish various committees, we'll find that whether in the bylaws or in the charter somewhere else.
Okay.
But temporary for now. And then investigations, E, selectmen may make investigation and authorize the town manager to investigate the affairs of the town and the conduct of any town agency, including any doubtful claims against the town. Results will be placed on file in the office of the Board of Selectmen. Report summarizing results shall be printed in the next annual town report. Seems like if you're going to do an investigation, I would want to have that made public and not wait till the annual report. I would ask, I think this is me, I would want town council to weigh in on this. I don't know if anyone has any opinions on that.
Is there any example of an investigation that was requested?
So we go back to the superintendent of schools several years ago, not the current one, where the false company was established and he was sending money to that company, and town accountant discovered it, the finance committee discovered it. So there was, I'm not sure if that was a true investigation that came to that point, but clearly the selectmen were involved at that point. Doubtful claims specifically on that one.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, though.
We need some more clarification on this. Anything else on Board of Selectmen for now? We go to Planning Board, which is section 310. Five members, 5 years. I think the only board of a 5-year term. No, the Board of Appeals.
I think ZBA.
ZBA and planning, with the idea that it is a long-range.
Not every member is very happy about the 5-year terms, but I think everyone seems to be understanding to maybe keep that the same. But what I wanted to focus in on was the things that have come up. There seems to be a plurality of the board that would like more oversight over the land use director. And this comes down into, he's noted in appointments as planning director, and that would, his actual title was land use director. So that was one thing that, we'd like to see a change there. We've given the planning land use director an opportunity, which we'll get back to us this month, to look at language changes, but the planning board is going to put forth language that basically, the situation that we're in, and it's not specific to Adam Bernie, who certainly is a professional, but the concern that the members of the board have is that, you have an employee who's here every day of the week to meet with different people, and that he is not textually obligated to actually be responsive to us. So we cannot fully direct his workflow. We cannot, if we request for any work product, that to enforce that request, we have to pursue the town manager to do it, which naturally creates a conflictual relationship. So you kind of have to work with whoever sits in that role wants to do, is willing to do, and that makes it very complicated with doing planning board functions. As far as getting insight into what advice is being given on a day-to-day basis, we don't really know. And that is something that, again, we have to go through the town manager in order to kind of direct our daily, we look at it as this is our daily representative, but we have no direction over what that person actually does.
So what I would respond was, thank you for bringing this up, because I'm going to propose for positions such as this, for the planning board, and I'm going to echo what's in the selectmen's. I'm going to change the language. You have the part that you're going to be careful studies, resources, comprehensive manual plan, regulate, recommendation, town meeting, all land use. Perhaps develop and promulgate policy guidelines, Provided, however, that nothing in this section shall be construed to authorize any member of the planning board nor a majority of its member to become involved in the day-to-day administration of the planning board. It is the intention of this provision that the planning board shall act only through the adoption of broad policy guidelines that are being implemented by the land use director.
That would be language that would work for us.
The reason I'm trying to get this to be very similar to possibly in sewer, park, possibly Board of Health, other elected positions, is to make it clear that you're supposed to do policy, and then you direct that policy to the employee that's operating that. The idea of having the town manager supervise, which we need to actually clarify and perhaps strengthen what supervision means of these positions, is so that there actually is somebody who's responsible for doing that, for doing an annual review, doing other things like that. And I think this was a conscious change in the charter to make sure that you didn't have people elected in any of our positions, selectmen or anything else, of running the employee.
Correct. And I think that the difficulty, like in our case that we're running into, is that, what happens day to day, there's no framework for that to be reported back to the board. So, we're kind of in the dark. And we get information, at the discretion of the employee.
So, how do we get... And what would probably be good is that when we get to the town manager language, we ought to see what language there might need to be repeated as well. Because I think the town manager, because I was trying to think, how do we know that the town manager is going to report to the selectmen on day-to-day? So we are not involved in it. And I think in the town manager language, there may be some of that that may be more appropriate to add into some of the other, without getting too much day-to-day.
Thinking of it, the town manager always does in your agenda, the town manager report, and you always get that sense of what she's been working on and what the updates are for any project that's been ongoing, and you really get that flow,
Yeah.
meeting
Same
after
thing in school
meeting.
committee.
And if we
So I
could get
think
that...
There's an agenda item that says superintendent's
So I
report.
think if there was, if that same...
There's no, I haven't been...
We have a director's report. We absolutely do. I think that the difficulty is that what is reported in the director's report is not of the same content as what is going on in the school committee, what's going on in the Board of Selectmen. What we would like to see is more of a mirror of what the Board of Selectmen are getting, in which you have someone that works for you guys and they are reporting to you a whole bunch of stuff. And then we would like to kind of get the same thing, but we can't fully direct it.
I agree with Bob that as we get comfortable with the town manager language, we should look to duplicate it in any other situation. But just the one piece that might help is that the town manager, for us, the town manager report is kind of created by her on what she thinks is important. We have something called action file issues, which is what we think we'd want to hear more about. And it may lag by a meeting, but that's our opportunity to say, we need you to put on your next town manager report an update on X, Y, and Z. And then we police ourselves if we stray from policy into, operational.
What is this year's report on the gas station in the center of town?
Right.
Still there.
Still not
Next
done.
Still might be contaminated.
That's right.
We certainly feel that there is a good model in town, and we just want to see it mirror.
That was such a lovely conversation too, Mr. Kelly used to always be whistling while he filled your tank.
That's true.
Right.
Anything else on the 3.10 planning board?
No, that was really the only thing, and I think that's what you suggested, Mr. Ursel, is an excellent remedy to kind of solve the issue that we're in. And again, it's not so much directed at our, Adam, as much as it's just the role and the relationship between the board and the role.
And then I would just put a placeholder under C for appointments. We have the appointment process, and I would want to make sure that we have a removal process or
Yes.
evaluation process, which we'll see this several times.
And the language
Again, not that I'm
change.
proposing to remove the land use director at the moment, but this is a process.
Yeah. And the language change from planning director to land use director. to leave you guys?
Is somebody willing to take minutes from this point on for the next half hour maximum?
Yeah, I'll look at it.
If not, does that mean we get to adjourn?
It is the will of this committee.
I'd suggest we just get through the school committee language, I think, and then call it a night.
Okay,
All right, thank you guys.
so it's back to
That's my suggestion.
3.3, school committee.
I'll take notes.
Thank you. So the school committee member, 5 members, powers, all the duties conferred to school committees by general laws. Specifically, elect a superintendent of the schools. And I always was surprised at the word elect.
Yeah, that,
Did they drop an S for select? It's a minor, but I would say to select.
I would say to appoint.
Well, it is by a vote of the school committee, so I assume that's where that word comes from.
Although you really, we should ask them that.
Sure. We'll just put a
And here
placeholder there.
it clearly says, shall be charged with day-to-day administration of school committee subject only to policy guidelines and directives adopted by the school committee. School committee can make reasonable rules and regulations for the management of the public school system, conducting the business of the school committee, adopt and administer an annual operating budget for the school committee, subject to appropriation by the town meeting. So does the school committee actually administer the budget?
Yes,
Okay.
we do line item transfers, we do, so, yeah.
Okay, good. General charge and superintendent. It's hard to let go. Of all school buildings and grounds, furnish all school buildings with proper fixtures, furniture, and equipment. Ordinary maintenance of all school buildings and grounds, that the town meeting may by bylaw provide for the establishment of a central municipal department, maintenance department, which may include maintenance of school buildings and grounds. So that was something that was talked about, maintenance of buildings. So we have the authority to do it at the moment. So that would be town meeting doing that by bylaw. Currently, we have school maintenance and we have all other building maintenance. So it says school buildings, going back to when, does that include non-school education buildings, which would have been the Brooks House?
I would assume that anything that is under the authority or jurisdiction of the school committee would be a school building.
Okay.
Until such responsibility is conveyed elsewhere.
Correct.
Which is what you did with the old primary. And Passios. No.
With Passios.
As the Brooks
And
House.
Brooks.
And the Brooks House.
Yep.
So then it's no longer under your jurisdiction.
Yep.
It becomes under the town.
Correct.
Then it goes to whenever the school committee shall determine additional classrooms are necessary, and then it effectively creates a building committee?
Yeah, that's basically the language that mirrors the, well, it actually predates the new MSBA law, but it mirrors the law.
So this is consistent with the law?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we go back to what did I see? Oh, B1, powers and duties. It's too bad we lost Michael. To elect a superintendent of the schools who shall be charged with the day-to-day administration of the school system, subject only to policy guidelines and directives adopted by the school committee. That sounds like the language he's looking for on the planning board.
Yep.
So that may be an alternative way, okay.
But is that the point of the position? And I don't
It is a
remember why
different-
you guys changed it from a planning director to a land use director. I don't know if it then created like a potential different focus.
I think that was something that Kerry wanted to do to broaden the scope of the role
Right.
and attract a certain set of qualifications to the position.
It was a span of control thing too, so that it would manage those other departments that were previously reporting directly to the town manager.
Right.
So
Building.
Yeah, all those separate.
So the land use in this is a discussion we need to get to, because the theory was the building, the plumbing, Board of Health possibly. Sewer was not entirely, that would not be a land use, but it's land use dotted lines. What was there was one other land use.
Well, it's the whole ZBA kind of administration stuff
CBA,
too.
yeah.
It's all
So there was more of a coordination of everything that somebody has to come in that relates to building should be under the land use director. So sewer not entirely because it's elected, but
So here's a question. All of those things, that's a really wide range. Does some of those things not fall under the planning board? I think some of those responsibilities escape things the planning board should have roles in, like the plumbing inspecting and things. Those aren't things that the planning board directly are associated with, so there's a really complex sort of situation there.
and the building inspector is when he's enforcing zoning, but not when he's enforcing building.
And so the planning board doesn't have a role in a large percentage of the things that the land use director is doing.
So I think we need to be careful that we don't give the planning board too
Control,
much control over the land use director.
right.
because he has this
Because
really complex...
in a mini way, it's similar to town manager. Because the selectmen have a certain amount of authority over town manager, but the town manager touches things that are under other elected boards that have nothing to do with our authority.
That's a good, and so this is where this language, whatever we come up with language that we like in various positions, we probably ought to have it be consistent all the way through.
As long as we keep, a clear differentiation between, appointed boards and elected boards.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. When you have a head of your department, like a superintendent, land use director, business manager, whatever the other similar positions, what are we turning that over on the day-to-day versus the general policy?
And it might be dissimilar just by its nature. The school committee with the superintendent fits together so nicely, because everything they're doing is all one package. In land use, it's just not packaged together under planning board.
Right, and the position of superintendent reports directly to the school committee and
Right.
is appointed by the school
Right,
committee.
it's a different
Whereas the
relationship.
land
It's
use
not
director
reported.
is appointed by the town manager.
And they also
that
talk about
statutorily?
having a role in his employment, but a lot of people, or his or her, but a lot of people, there's also how does everybody else who is involved in land use, if everybody else is okay with how the land use director is going, but they want to exhibit some sort of control over the position,
Right.
who has,
They have to go
Interesting.
through the town manager, which is something they don't like.
and maybe they
Well,
have
sure.
to because of all the other things the land use director is doing, that
Right.
they can't have that control over that person.
Right.
Nor by philosophical should they. If we're talking about the role of the elected body being policy-driven, they shouldn't have that much control. They should set the policies that guide his behavior.
Yeah.
That should be it.
Yeah.
12,000
The
feet.
But I'm
building
thinking,
inspecting-
they want more reports, more updates, which is what you guys have set up for the selectmen.
But they'd have
You get your reports, and then if there's something you want to know more about, you...
I think that the language is helpful. I think he wants that there'll be a clarity about the roles or responsibilities of the board versus the director. Like what is the nature of that relationship?
And we're going to see the same discussion with Parks, Cemetery, DPW.
Right.
And I think it's what Jamie said, you ask for what you want, and maybe they need to ask for what they need.
Does that happen?
And on one level, they have to say that's none of your business, if in fact we're getting into
Yep.
operational.
And if we have anything, we have a thing,
Yeah, in a nice way.
agenda item, it says topics of future discussion. So that's, okay. So it's very similar to that, which is, that's an area where we'll say, let's put this on the next agenda for discussion. And we'll let the superintendent to prepare for that. Right. Got it.
Is there anything, who's the contact with the school committee? Is it these two?
We're appointed, but I think he was...
Okay. Have they talked about the charter yet?
No.
Okay. What I would ask is, this may be working for them, is there anything that should be added that doesn't change the powers or duties, but explains to the public what the school committee does?
They have a televised meeting next Wednesday. Let me contact them and see if they would put that on the agenda.
This again goes to the communication tool that we're not going to go and get everything from every general law. That's too much because we don't want to do that. This is generally what's going on. But if there's one line or something else that may explain it, that a person would say, why does the school committee do it? It's like, well, the general law says it, but we also have it in the charter. Is that something that would help?
I'm sorry, Mike, you say you're meeting next week?
That's the first week of December, right? So it's a televised at town hall.
Really, December?
What?
Is that December?
Yes.
So we had this end of the month special town meeting that everyone was focused on, and the next few days is December.
I was confused when I went to Parker's and it was all Christmas. Although my husband too.
Still the first and third Wednesday for some reason, I'm still like, what do I do?
So,
Go ahead and
anything
be with
else?
Don Juan.
Totally separate topic.
You don't know what to do.
When we are meeting was a topic because we get a little bit into some holidays coming up.
Yeah, we wanted to do that. Anything else on school committee? Okay, why don't we go into scheduling the meetings?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend that when we do number 4, which is the town manager, we devote kind of a whole meeting to that and invite the town manager to join us. But I also would recommend that we give her enough time to prepare for that. So whether that means we take it out of order or whatever, I just think that would be really meaningful.
Sounds appropriate.
So, we've got Board of Health next week, the contact library next week. We already got feedback from the town moderator. Park commissioners still trying to get contact with the planning board, trust fund commissioner. Cemetery. Housing authority?
Is that mine?
I don't remember.
You know, I had another one, but I couldn't remember what it was.
When you say you didn't hear from Parks,
I have not heard from
I've
Parks.
been talking to them about playground in Article 5. Do you want me to try to do that?
Put a bug in there here.
Okay.
I've offered to go to one of their meetings and talk about it. It could be that there really is no need for any change,
Okay.
unless we're going to propose change in language just to be consistent with other
So
sections.
they're a good example of day-to-day operation is under the Board of Selectmen, but there have been some question of whether the day-to-day appointment of people to the beach is the park department or the town manager. So I think there is some discussion that they're going to need to have a little bit more, because they're an example of the previous Parks Commission before the charter really did the parks.
They ran it.
They ran it, and to an extent, they've been running it since. And so the question becomes, is that the right way to do it? And really, do they need more resources because it's bodies as opposed to them doing it? And what are the broad policy guidelines that the Park Commission would be doing versus deciding what they're doing with the turf field, scheduling, because the Park Department has actually done scheduling.
Yeah, it's basically running operations.
And was that a cost savings? Because they used to have a separate parks employee that I don't think they have anymore, but it does fall under DPW.
Used to be if you wanted to get into the fields and turn the lights on, you just go to somebody's house and go in their mailbox and get the cake.
Okay, so I think I would say our next meeting, keep working on 3, because we're going to probably get some feedback from the various committees. And then maybe the second meeting in December, talk about the town manager.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I will not be here on the 13th, and I would prefer to be here for the town manager one, so I think that's lining up with what you just said.
Okay, so the 27th would be the, okay, so we should not...
And I should probably make sure you get a key, too.
Yeah. Well, actually, I emailed the town manager to get a copy,
Okay.
so we're all set. All right, so...
Well, I'll know more at the next meeting, but I may not be around on the 27th.
Okay.
Do we know if the town manager's off for school break?
I have no
You
idea.
don't know.
But I do know that she wants to prepare for this.
Okay. Well, if she's not, if you can talk to her, Jamie?
Sure.
If she's not available on the 27th, then we can push it to the first.
Yeah,
meeting.
we're hoping to talk to her at the next meeting on the 14th anyway, to go through some of the other more financial related to business.
I think, you know what, she did mention today, she's taken off the week between Christmas
Okay,
and
so
New Year,
that's-
so that's not going to work.
Okay. So then that would be January 10th.
Okay, I will talk to her about that, for
Oh my
sure.
gosh, it's almost annual town meeting.
Oh, no, we gotta get through all the budget hearings.
Well, you get a lot done between January and town meeting, right?
We gotta get it to town council before
That's
town
right.
meeting.
So we can do
Practically
surveys
time.
and public comments and other stuff like that. I mean, I'm very realistic. I want to get a good product, and if we make it to town meeting, we make it to town meeting. If we don't, we would go to the next
We
step.
can bring it to the special town meeting, which will be our
Okay.
last
All right.
special fall
That's
town
right.
meeting,
Right.
if we make it.
Okay.
We can meet all summer.
So the next two meetings will be December 13th and the 27th.
So work on 3 on December 13th, anything else?
Let's see, that's going to be it. 4 is the town manager.
How many are good?
5 is fire and emergency services. We can talk about that. 6 is all finances and fiscal procedures.
Which we're going to
Do on the 14th.
Okay.
do on the
And,
14th.
you know, this,
So we should do that this 27th.
If you're going to do that, we can
report out on it.
report back on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 6.2 is school committee budget, 6.3 is submission of the budget, 6.5 is budget. Then you get into some of the, and I think we've got enough to do for the next couple minutes. All right. Anything else? Comments from the board, committee? Comments from the public?
Will we adjourn?
Is there a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
8:50.